When a man rejects the perfect love, he risks becoming the final data point in an algorithm that determines the future of all human relationships. His defiance against the Artemis matchmaking AI wasn't a choice. It was a desperate gamble against the one force that knew him better than he knew himself. The air in the Artemis Concorde chamber felt sterilized, devoid of the messy imperfection of human feeling. Adrian Vance, a man who built his life on verifiable data, stood before a holographic display that shimmered with the calculated promise of his future. The display showed two faces side by side, joined by a single terrifying number: 99.9% compatibility. Adrian was a lead AI ethicist, ironically, working against the very system that now dictated his love life. He had spent years advocating for free will against the rise of algorithmic governance, yet here he was, staring down the barrel of his own perfect fate. He was 28, sharp, meticulous, and terminally skeptical of anything that claimed to solve the human heart with mathematics. Across a polished, translucent table sat Dr. Alastair Finch, the lead architect of Artemis. Finch was an academic rock star, a man whose glasses perched on his nose with the confidence of someone who had literally codified love. "Congratulations, Adrian," Dr. Finch said, his voice a dry, professorial monotone. "Artemis has completed its analysis. This is a higher correlation score than any recorded match in the system's 4-year history. You and Ilara are, statistically speaking, soulmates." Adrian didn't look at Finch. He stared at the face of his intended bride, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, a subtle smile, and a profile of interests that mirrored his own exactly. The sheer perfection made him sick. "I reject the match, Doctor," Adrian said, his voice calm, steady, and utterly firm. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the sound of a perfectly tuned machine stuttering. Dr. Finch slowly removed his glasses. "You reject it. On what grounds, Adrian?" "Sentimentality. A romantic notion that defies predictive analytics. We've proven a 98% success rate in sustained, happy unions. This is 99.9%. "The grounds are simple," Adrian countered, leaning across the table. "You've matched me based on who I am, not who I could be. You found my mirror image. I didn't come here for a perfect reflection. I came for a partner. And my contract allows for a full challenge of the algorithm's findings." Dr. Finch's lips twisted into something that bordered on a sneer, reminiscent of a judge mocking an unprepared defense attorney. "This isn't a university debate, Adrian. The variables are irrefutable. You both prefer classical music over electronic, quiet evenings over crowds, ethical veganism, and have identical sleep cycles. You are a data scientist who demands proof, and here is your proof. What more do you need?" Adrian pulled a thin data pad from his jacket pocket, a violation of the Concorde's no-device policy, but Finch didn't stop him. "I need to know how the 0.1% was lost," Adrian said. "If the system is truly perfect, why the deviation? I want to see the core code and the weighting matrix for that final fraction. A statistical error is a flaw, and a flaw is grounds for dismissal." A ripple of nervous energy spread through the few observers in the room, staff members who had witnessed thousands of grateful acceptances, but never a public challenge from one of their own. Dr. Finch regained his composure. "You know the code is proprietary. It's the foundation of this society. We cannot expose it to a disgruntled ethicist," Adrian interrupted, his voice cutting through the space. "One who holds clearance level 7. The system's rules state, any match above 99% must submit to full transparency upon formal challenge by a level 7 analyst. You wrote that rule yourself, Doctor. I am simply following the data where it leads." Finch hesitated. The pause was just long enough. Adrian knew he had him. The irony was not lost on him. The only way to beat the algorithm was to use the algorithm's own rules against it. Finch sighed, rubbing his temple, finally nodding. "No objections, Adrian. Let's see your breakdown. But I warn you, you will find no solace in perfection." Adrian worked for 3 days in a soundproof isolation room, staring at the raw, elegant code of the Artemis core. He found no errors, no flaws, and no statistical discrepancies. The 99.9% match was genuine. He was Ilara's perfect mirror. Frustration, a human emotion he rarely allowed, started to gnaw at him. Finally, deep in the nonlinear regression module, he found it, a single, heavily encrypted variable labeled Chi12. It had a minimal weighting, only accounting for the 0.1% deviation, but it was unique. Every other variable measured compatibility, shared interests, goals, neuropatterns, but Chi12 measured conflict. Adrian ran the decryption and his hands went cold. It wasn't a measure of why they were alike. It was a measure of the one single thing that was different, the one variable that was guaranteed to introduce stress into the perfect equation. It was the only part of the match designed to make them grow, not just coexist. He immediately cross-referenced Ilara's public profile against the Chi12 data. Her public profile showed a meticulous historian and rare books expert. The Chi12 data, however, revealed a hidden layer. Ilara was a high-risk disaster relief volunteer who spent her mandated annual leave in active conflict zones. Adrian, a man who refused to drive above the speed limit and whose life was a series of perfectly executed schedules, was matched with a woman whose hidden life was constant, unpredictable survival. He marched back to the Concord chamber, where Dr. Finch was waiting, his face serene. "I found it," Adrian stated, slamming his datapad down. "The Chi12 variable. It measures disruption. Why is the world's most successful matchmaking AI deliberately introducing conflict into a perfect match? That 0.1% wasn't an error, it was a feature." Dr. Finch smiled, a genuine, unsettling expression. "You're right, Adrian. It's the difference between a perfect pairing and a permanent bond." "But she's a chaos agent," Adrian exclaimed, the calm exterior finally cracking. "She seeks high-risk environments. The data says she'll introduce stress, risk, and constant upheaval into my life. That's the opposite of a successful match." "Is it?" Finch countered, standing up. "Our early models produced perfect happiness. Zero conflict, zero stress. The subjects were compatible, but they were also stagnant. They grew bored. They became emotionally sterile. They lived comfortable, long lives, but they never changed." Finch stepped around the table, his posture suggesting a final, irrefutable lesson. Artemis isn't programmed to find you a partner who makes you comfortable. It's programmed to find you a partner who makes you live, who will challenge your deepest beliefs, who will force you out of your self-imposed prison of data and logic. Ilara's history of survival is the antithesis to your need for control. The only way to achieve a permanent union is to ensure that both partners are constantly evolving. The 99.9% is your shared foundation. The 0.1% is the wedge that forces you to build something new. We don't want you to succeed because you're the same. We want you to succeed because you overcome the difference. Adrian was silent. He looked at the holographic image of Ilara again. Her eyes weren't just intelligent. They held a deep, quiet resilience. He suddenly realized that rejecting her wasn't a defense of free will. It was a defense of his comfort zone. The AI had forced him to look at his own flaws and the true, complex nature of love. He had prepared for a legal argument, but the AI had delivered a philosophical challenge. "I don't need to challenge the match, Doctor," Adrian said, finally pocketing his datapad. "I need to meet her." Dr. Finch nodded, a look of quiet triumph in his eyes. "That's why you were the perfect candidate for this test, Adrian. You had the intelligence to question the data, but the integrity to accept the conclusion. The perfect match was not a mirror. It was a lens that showed you your own blind spot." Adrian walked out of the Concord, his perfectly ordered life now facing the ultimate disruption. He wasn't walking toward a wife. He was walking toward the most unpredictable, life-altering survival mission of his career. If this story about the future of love and data resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the human element of growth and conflict is essential. Hit that like button, Subscribe for more stories that challenge the perfect narrative, and let's keep the conversation going.